Guys, it's Sunday, and I usually don't work on Sunday, but I try not to. And it's almost 6 o'clock, and my church program is about to come on. So I want to do a very short tutorial, and that is going to address, pick up where the last video left off, and address the issues and concerns about the rotations and an independent hip. And this will break into a new area. I'm going to show you some new tools in dealing with the linking and the bone structure and the hierarchy. So here, let me show you our independent hip, which is very cool. So we have a global center of gravity hip control, which is here. This is the center of gravity, and this is a big controller that controls a lot of the body, and this is awesome. We're really enjoying this. Okay, and so get it straight again. Okay, and then we have this awesome hip control here. Only thing is, it pulls and stretches when you move it. So if you rotate it, it's pretty nice. But also, it gives us more control to move this hip. And just a little, once we move this, let's say, once we move the center of gravity, then we have a little extra control to, let's say, independently arrange and move the hips, and which is nice. And so when we animate, we do less counter animation. Let's say, so we don't move and then have to move the hips and stuff like that. But all of this is free linking, okay? So we have to do less counter animation, and it's a little bit more extensive, a little bit more flexible than some of my first original rigs. But the problem is when we rotate it. If you notice, there's two problems. So when we translate it, it stretches the geometry. Now, this is one particular pet peeve that I have about rigging in EI, that I don't like for my rigs to stretch the geometry. I try to stay away from that as much as possible. It's okay. You know, you just don't pull the geometry, and sometimes you want to pull the geometry. But in general, I want this to hold the volume. So I don't want the geometry to be pulled when I pull this controller. So, and then another thing about it, the hip doesn't really move. Like, it doesn't move like around the center here. It moves from this bone here, the joint, the spine of this bone. So this is detached. And so to deal with that and to make it better, what we want to do is to create what EI has in its link window, which is, let's say here, let's go here. And if we select like the root, normally what you would have on the root is different types of link settings, and I want to show you this, that you can control like how it locks here and what rotates here. So you have limitations. You can limit the amount of control or movement, and so here are some presets like pin sliding, hinges, and things like that. So this is free, and what we want to do is go to like a ball and socket. So in general, hips, and you can see a little pictogram icon of each of the type of rigs. I don't use them all, but they are good. But each one will affect the rig type, the linking and the locking. So you basically will see here that each time you go up in here, you will see, okay, well, with a pin, when you pin, and then if you just want to double check and see what happened, you can see which. So you can turn these on and off, and do them yourself. But what we want is just a socket which inevitably or just locks the position. And so that's going to be okay. But let's just keep it, instead of using custom setting, let's use the socket. And if we check, like I don't know if you could, I had that root connected off, but if you take that, turn the visibility on again. So now if you try to move the root, it still kind of moves, all right? So so I don't really know, I'm not going to explain that or go heavy into that, but that's not really controlling it. The root is connected to the independent hip, and so that is where the control is. Only thing is, the independent hip centroid is actually here, and we don't want it to pin and lock from there and twist from there. We want it to pin and twist, or to lock and twist from this joint area here, which is more of the bone anatomy and structure. So if we go into the link window, or if you actually you can actually have Control Option and double click and get into that link window as well. You can change that. You can change the pivot point, or where this actually pivots from here. So you can grab the y-axis and try to move it directly up without moving it. Maybe if I hold just the T, it'll help. I don't know. But just try to line it up and move it. Doesn't have to be 100% exact, but just try to move it up. And you can see that the axis, or the centroid, at where that pivots from, has changed. And yes, you can go in there and make it even better. And if you go to the side view, and so we'll say left side, and well, actually, let's, you notice that let's make it right side, so then we can keep the axis looking the same. And it's a double axis, so you can move it here, and so let me move it right there. So then that's even closer. Okay, doesn't have to be 100% correct, but as much as you can get it, you know, into that joint area will be good. All right. So now, when we go and we rotate this, I think so when I move the root, it moved it moved the previous one. So I would suggest that you don't move the root. So leave it free, or whatever I did there. But it moved the box, so it's not perfect. So just don't move the root. Or if you want to reopen the file and start again after you watch this. But basically, so we have the rotation of that, which is much more natural, and it comes from that center, from the actual rotation of that. So when you move this controller, the independent hip now is going to move from the that level, that joint, or that pivot point. And again, this isn't straight now, so I mean, I must have done something. Maybe it's just not straight. Okay, now it's straight. Sorry. So that's somewhere I move it. You know, it's good to watch the videos first, though. But also with the independent hip, you can go and you can add, instead of a free, because it's still the rotations of it, the translation, sorry, it still stretches. And instead of doing all that and allowing it to do all that, you can use the socket, and now when you translate it, it is locked in there. And so you don't have to worry about stretching. You all have to be concerned about stretching that geometry when you go to move this, when you go to edit this controller. It just simply won't move. It'll pull the rest of the body, and that's okay, because it does that in a natural form. So so that's something to think about and to do. And that is also a concern that when we go to the spine. So again, we have the same hip movement on that pulling and stretching of the translation, when it could be easily solved. I can either double click it, hold it, control, command control, option control, or whatever keyboards. I never remember the exact modifiers. I just know where they are. And so anyway, I can move that from there in the link window back to socket, and what it'll do is it'll stop it from translating, and it'll still give me that really nice control and on the rotation. So now I have two really great ways of rotating this control without it going out of whack. Okay? So, and then I have less stretching and pulling on the geometry, and it's very natural. Okay? So that is a lesson in the link window and how you can use certain constraints in the link window, which is most every item has a link window, or every item does have a link window. And the way you move the pivots, moving the pivot, and the way you limit these. Now you can also go in here and start to limit the actual how much you can do that, but let's not get too heavily involved in that. That could be problematic. It does work. It works extremely well. This kind of stuff is really great for, let's say, robots. But on a human form, they're not as great. I was also thinking about doing a robot DVD. I did do a Puma DVD, a Puma rig for Puma, and with my team, where I rigged that robot in ElectricImage. It's not my property, so I can't show it, but I did do that, and I did an extensive amount of linking and limitations, and also mainly because I had to give the rig to other ElectricImage animators, and so I gave it to like 3 or 4 ElectricImage animators, and so I didn't want them to pull it. They didn't know the rig as well as I did, but if you're going to just animate this rig, and you're the only one working, and you know what you want, how far you want to pull it or not, so you don't have to be so careful about that. You want to get the job done, and I want to stress that because I've looked at other rigs in Maya, and you can do so much as far as so many controls and interfaces for the rig, and then by the time you're done, you don't have time to animate it, or you're so worn out on it that you really just don't care to animate it. So that's the case. Bones, let me go back here. Bones have a natural, when you make a link IK, Bones have a natural socket. They naturally do that. They naturally have a socket constraint in it. So you don't have to do it for every bone or every item, but it's certain ones when you rearrange it, especially the first one in a bone chain, which is what we have here, is where you're going to get that type of, when you're going to get those types of linking. So again, time's up on this video. I think we're almost about 10 minutes. And so there you have it. And that pretty much concludes everything that we need to do for that. We might want to keep this available. Now, I want to mention something about the ReadyRigs and more about the bones and the spine. Is that in my other rigs, I have 3 or 4 controllers on 3 spine rigs, or 2, actually 2. So there is a way that you can control these and change the behavior of the rotations of these, and that will give you a great deal of control when it comes to our natural S-spine, I like to call it. And so there are ways to rig this in order to do that, and it will give you more control. And then you can start to build more controllers outward of that. We may or may not do that, but if you just need to turn this, just leave it and control it. Use it as a control. And then you can get your rig done, your animation done. So even though I generally don't like to use a lot of control, I don't like to use bones as controllers. You can do it and animate directly on the bone. So at this point, with this part of the spine, you can use that. This part, it gets a little complicated and conjunctive. And so that's where you want to have one spine controller here to move this. So that is the thing that we'll start to do, is to finish out and to automate some of the spine controls here. Now, again, at this point, with this lower part of the section, you could probably go ahead and start to animate. But this is to add more functionality to that. So the next one, we did the pelvic area here, and we have true controls for that. Okay, we control it here, and then we want some more control, so we control the whole body here. And then let's say we want that to be a little bit more control here, or twist. We have this to really more or less tweak this, and then we can start to go up here and start to animate this different ways. Okay, next we'll start into here. Okay, it's time for my show, and I gotta go. Enjoy next video coming in a couple hours. All right, bye now.